Welcome back to CIA Declassified. The stage is set not in the war-torn trenches or the high-stakes embassy parties, but in the most boring rooms in the world. The local planning offices, the water boards, and, of course, the city councils. While the world watched national leaders, the agency realized that true power lies in the mundane. If you control the zoning laws, the infrastructure permits, and the local police budgets, you control the environment in which an entire population lives. The agency needed a way to cultivate influence that would last for decades. Assets who weren't just spies, but neighbors. They needed a method to embed operatives into the very brick and mortar of foreign and domestic municipalities. This was the long-term infiltration project known as KUVINE. How did this quiet takeover get its name? The cryptonym KUVINE is a product of the agency's centralized naming system. The KU prefix was historically utilized by the agency to denote operations involving the Staff D or Communications Intelligence branches, often linked to internal support and administrative infiltration. Records from declassified internal memos suggest the suffix "vine" was a metaphor for the way the program was intended to grow, like a vine that slowly wraps around a structure until it's inseparable from the building itself. KUVINE assets were meant to intertwine with the local government until the agency was the local government. KUVINE was the agency's experiment in administrative capture, turning the gears of local policy into tools of intelligence. Established as a multi-decade initiative, KUVINE focused on the placement of deep sleeper assets into entry-level bureaucratic positions within target cities. A quote from a declassified 1984 operation plan. The most effective control is that which is perceived by the subject as a routine administrative requirement. End quote. The KUVINE protocol required assets to spend 5 to 10 years in passive ascension, performing their municipal jobs perfectly to earn promotions into middle management without drawing suspicion. A quote from the Directorate of Operations. Our goal is not to overthrow the council, but to become the council's indispensable administrative backbone. End quote. The protocol utilized strategic procrastination, where assets would lose paperwork for political opponents while fast-tracking approvals for agency-aligned contractors. Logs describe the zoning leverage technique, where assets manipulated property development permits to ensure agency-owned front companies could purchase land adjacent to high-value targets. KUVINE assets were trained in resource throttling, the ability to subtly delay or accelerate public works projects like road repairs or electrical upgrades to aid or hinder other agency operations in the area. Records indicate the use of data vacuuming via local utility boards, where assets collected water and power usage patterns to determine the occupancy of foreign consulates or suspected safe houses. The agency utilized civic vetting, where KUVINE assets and human resource departments ensured that only friendly or manipulatable individuals were hired for sensitive local security roles. KUVINE documentation reveals information channeling, a method of leaking municipal secrets to local journalists to discredit political figures who opposed agency interest. The program established logistical anchors, seemingly legitimate city-owned warehouses and garages that were actually used for the clandestine storage of agency hardware. The agency collaborated with urban sociologists to map the power flow of small-town politics, identifying which low-level clerks actually held the most gatekeeping power. Logs confirm that KUVINE assets often served on planning commissions to direct urban growth toward areas where the agency already had established surveillance infrastructure. The project developed legal shielding, where assets in the city attorney's office would squash investigations into agency-affiliated individuals before they reached the trial stage. Records show that the agency maintained redundancy sleepers to assets in the same city who didn't know each other, ensuring that if one was exposed, the vine remained intact. The protocol identified crisis management as a key entry point. Assets were often the first to volunteer for emergency response committees to gain access to restricted communication networks. Documentation reveals the use of municipal grants to fund local nonprofits that were actually agency-run influence nodes. Technical logs confirm that KUVINE assets installed passive repeaters on the roofs of city halls to extend the range of clandestine radio networks. The program proved that an asset in the sanitation department was often more valuable than one in the mayor's office, as they had physical access to the trash of every resident in the city. KUVINE utilized education board infiltration to subtly influence local curricula or identify promising young students for future recruitment. The project utilized tax audit weaponization, where assets in local revenue departments targeted dissidents with endless financial red tape. Records prove that the agency used urban renewal projects as a cover to install specialized fiber optic cables for signal intelligence throughout major metropolitan areas. KUVINE researchers analyzed commuter synchronicity, learning how to use public transit schedules to create natural dead drops for agents. When we look at the declassified KUVINE manifest, the absolute heaviest redactions, compromising thousands of pages of total blackouts, are around things such as the domestic interagency liaison and municipal control. That file is essentially a void, specifically the section on continuity of influence in U.S. metropolitan areas, which is completely missing. Why is the agency hiding the details of which American cities have KUVINE roots? There is a persistent rumor among digital rights activists that the smart city movement is the final form of KUVINE. Speculation regarding the autonomous urban management redactions suggests that urban planning is being driven by predictive policing algorithms developed by the agency. Theorists argue that things like 15-minute cities aren't about convenience, but about creating manageable digital containment zones, where movement can be tracked and restricted by a centralized KUVINE-style bureau. In the hushed corners of preparedness forums, people point to the redacted municipal deep logs and state that they are evidence of shadow governments. This theory claims that KUVINE assets are placed in every major city to act as the true continuity of government during a national crisis. Conspiracy theorists suggest that in a total blackout, these unelected bureaucrats, the water managers and city engineers, would step in to execute executive order protocols that the public has never seen. Looking at the vital resource manipulation files, rumors swirl about biochemical nudges. Some believe the redactions hide experiments where KUVINE assets and water treatment plants tested the effects of various additives on a local population's suggestibility or passivity. While often dismissed as fringe, the blackout on resource additive logs remains one of the most cited points for those who believe the agency is still tinkering with municipal utilities. Speculation persists that KUVINE is used for demographic engineering. Rumors suggest the redacted urban renewal infiltration blueprints show the agency intentionally directing investment to certain neighborhoods while letting others decay. The theory is that this creates a man-made social tension used to test crowd control technologies and surveillance drones in real-world urban laboratories. Lastly, some suggest the redacted property deed logs prove that the agency has its own private MLS. Theorists argue KUVINE allows the agency to purchase entire blocks of homes through shell companies before they ever hit the public market, ensuring that every neighbor in a sensitive area is actually an agency-vetted ghost. Was KUVINE a success? Tactically, it was a bureaucratic triumph. The agency successfully proved that soft power at the municipal level is more durable than hard power at the national level. Strategically, it was an invisible empire. It allowed the agency to create environments where their operations could flourish without ever needing to interact with national police or military. The project was a success because it recognized that a city clerk is often more powerful than a general when it comes to daily life. It proved that a well-placed bureaucrat could act as a force multiplier for every other agency cryptonym. The fact that the most sensitive KUVINE manifests remain 100% redacted in 2026 suggests the networks established in the 80s are not only still active, but have become the bedrock of 2026 municipal management. Furthermore, the program demonstrated that true control is achieved when the governed believe their restrictions are merely administrative necessity. It was a success that fundamentally redefined infiltration as a lifelong career of public service. It turned the boring into the lethal. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs are concerned, the Silent City led to many breakthroughs, such as predictive urban modeling. The resource throttling analysis of KUVINE is now the standard for smart grid optimization used by power companies to prevent blackouts. Massive data integration. The data vacuuming of utility boards led to municipal LOT platforms, or is it IoT? I'm not sure. Computer people, you know. That moniker is everything from trash levels to air quality in real time. Administrative vetting algorithms. The civic vetting techniques are used today in background check AI for high security government and corporate hiring. And psychological infrastructure design. The agency's work on power flow mapping has evolved into nudge theory urban design, where the layout of a park or street subtly influences how people behave and interact. KUVINE reminds us that the person approving your home addition or managing your local park might be the most important person in your life for all the wrong reasons. When you look at the mundane machinery of your town, remember the Silent City. The agency realized long ago that you don't need to control a king if you control the man who signs the king's property taxes. You are not just a resident in the eyes of KUVINE. You are a data point in a 40-year experiment in social engineering. The world isn't just a place we live, it's an administrative lattice designed to keep us moving in the right direction. Every routine update to your city serves as a reminder that the vine is always growing, quietly and without a sound. It is the invisible architecture that houses your choices before you even make them. The city speaks in a language of permits and codes, but the message is written in Langley. Thanks for listening, and join us next time as we examine J.M. Race. In the post-colonial struggle for identity, the agency developed a project to influence the ethnic and racial narratives in emerging nations. We'll uncover the cultural engineering manifest and the identity warfare blueprints. Join us next time for the narrative forge. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.